Welcome back to the channel. We're smoking on my dragons, divine, righteous, almighty, greats, overachieving, never slacking. We got British passive aggressiveness, the polite way to be rude. And I figured I would get into this so I could just understand the British way better, right? So with that being said, original link will be in the description, and we're gonna dive right into it. Here we go.
I'm going to talk about how the British use passive aggression, as there's a common perception that we're really quite masterful at this bad communication habit. If you're new here, welcome. I make videos about the unspoken codes and unconscious behaviours that exist in English-speaking culture. And most recently, I've been on a bit of a journey of discovering what some of these are through teaching business English to multiple cultures. So whether you're a curious native English speaker or an advanced English user, I think you'll find something here for you on this channel. So let's get to it. As previously mentioned, British people are masters of passive-aggressive behaviour. It can be very subtle, and therefore it's a real challenge for non-native users to grasp what is actually meant rather than taking the words at face value. So this is especially challenging for non-natives from very direct cultures who can absolutely rely on taking all words at face value. You have to alter your cultural expectations when communicating with the British, especially if you're from a culture that relies on very direct communication. Our usage of English is very nuanced. It includes a lot of irony, a lot of sarcasm, and a lot of understatement. We're using these kinds of things all the time, every day. So why do the British behave like this? The British really value avoiding conflict. We value lots of politeness, lots of indirectness.
Which is the complete opposite from a New Yorker. Whereas we're head on, straight to it. Like, I'm an Aries too. I'm a Ram for those that are into the zodiac. I'm not gonna say confrontational. I definitely don't. When I was younger, yeah, when I was in boxing heavy and um yeah, I was definitely, when you're younger you tend to be more impulsive, have more of an impulsive nature. But as I got older, definitely it's like I really appreciate my peace.
We always want to save face. We don't want to overimpose. We don't even want to impose. We just want to look to maintain the social harmony as much as possible. So we use a lot of indirectness in order to achieve this, which just adds another layer of confusion for non-natives. Much of this stems from social hierarchies, the class system, where restraint and subtlety were most valued. I am going to do a video sometime soon that's about reading between the lines, and this is really designed for non-natives to increase their skills and increase their abilities to try and decode the actual meanings behind many of these messages, phrases and sentences that British people are using. So if you've not hit subscribe yet, please hit subscribe and make sure you don't miss that one that's going to be coming out quite soon. So getting started, firstly,
Original link in the description if you'd like to go hit subscribe and check out her work.
the British use a lot of what's called euphemisms. If you don't know what a euphemism is, it's basically a phrase or an expression softens the actual message. So it softens negativity, making the message less direct. This can be really hard for non-natives to spot and pick up on and react appropriately. An example could be when you hear someone say, someone is a bit of a character, which can imply that the person is difficult to deal with, or maybe they're a bit eccentric or something like that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a great person and they are, in fact, a really, really great character. Probably there's something a little bit odd or strange about them. But again, you have to pick up on tone and context, and I'm going to touch more on this in my Read Between the Lines video. So another example of a British person softening a message by using one of these particular phrases would be, maybe you've invited them to a social event or some kind of business event that's not compulsory, and the response you get from this person is simply, I'll let you know. And this is a really classic one. If there's not much other context surrounding this, what this generally means is the person's not very interested, then they're not super committed, they may not respond to you, and if they do respond, the chances are, again, probably they're not going to attend the event. And this can be hard for non-natives because what it literally signals
Americans do that a lot too, as far as the I'll let you know. For sure.
is that there's sort of a promise of a reply, or there is some intention there, but the fact is there's very low intention there. Most of the time this signals a real lack of intention. So another passive aggressive way that British people communicate, or rather don't communicate, is using silence as a bit of a strategy. So if you're a non-native, please do not assume that if a British person pauses for a long time, or if they take a long time to respond in a conversation, or if they're completely silent, please do not interpret this as agreement or compliance. Most times when a British person does this, when they pause for a long time or they go silent, it's a really strong signal that that person does not agree, or maybe they're uncomfortable, or they're not really sure actually how to respond, and maybe they don't know how.
I feel like that's a sign of intelligence too, though. Instead of just because obviously when you just impulsive and you just quick to say something, you could say something that'll burn down the whole castle or start wars have been started that way. Even if you look at the movie The Godfather, if you remember Sonny when they were in a meeting with other high mafia members, mobsters, and Sonny kept opening his mouth during the meeting and talking, and that showed a lot of weakness, which was not good for the family. So it's like when I feel like that silence and just taking it in, I feel like that's a sign of intelligence. So shout out to the Brits.
How to respond because they're really not comfortable with what's been asked of them, or they're not comfortable with the topic that's being discussed at the time. Sometimes it can be a signal for indifference, that maybe somebody's not uncomfortable, but they're just simply not interested. But generally speaking, if we can express our indifference politely, we will, because actually, although the British do use silence as a strategy, we actually don't like silence that much. I believe we really don't like too much silence. I think we find it awkward. And so what can happen at times is that silence might then get reset with some small talk topics, just to reset the tone or reset the direction of the conversation. So if you're finding this useful, please like and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you're comfortable to do so, it's really nice if you let me know where you're commenting from, just so we can sort of put some context with your comments and understand your perspective. Don't forget to be polite in the comments, please. So another way that British people can come across as quite passive aggressive is we are very non-committal in our responses, which for non-natives can naturally seem very open-ended, uncertain, and vague. But sometimes we do this just to avoid saying no, or maybe we want to create some kind of a delay because we're not yet decided. We're not in a position that we want to decide on something at this very moment. So you may hear phrases like maybe, or we'll see, or I'll see, I'll get back to you on that. And this is all about avoiding awkwardness and confrontation. Generally speaking, we are not comfortable with outright direct refusals. It's very uncomfortable for British people. And this doesn't have to be about invitations for social events. It could even be maybe you're trying to push an idea at work, or a proposal, or a plan, or something like that, and perhaps a boss or somebody senior says, I'm not sure that would work, or I'll have to think about it. What this often means is just no, but in a very less direct way. So maybe they don't say no to you right now, but they've said these phrases, and then when you go and follow up with them a day later or 2 days later, then you may get a very awkward no, or something that implies no, or a load of reasons or excuses as to why this just isn't the right thing right now. So please don't confuse this with a possibility or a potential, or the potential for a further discussion about the matter later. Generally, it's a signal for no, so then when you go and follow it up a few days later, most of the time you're going to get no and a bunch of reasons, or no and a bunch of excuses, and the person that has to go through that with you will feel very awkward doing that. So another passive aggressive thing that British people do almost daily would be the usage of sarcasm, especially when things are going wrong, and often the tone that we use is very subtle, or it may not even be a tone, it might just be in our regular tone, but the words that come out of our mouth are absolutely said neutrally, but they are sarcastic. So you've got to pick up on the context and the situation. And again, look out for my video that's coming up later on how to read between the lines. So a classic sarcastic phrase that might be used with a sarcastic tone or just a completely neutral tone would be, "That's just brilliant." So to a non-native, this might come across as, "Oh, something's really good," or "Something's favorable," or "Great." No, it's not. Something's really, really bad. But again, pay attention to the situation, the context, look at a person's body language. Another way that British people use passive aggression is through polite criticism. So this is when our negative message is wrapped up in very polite language. And sometimes this often sounds like a suggestion, but the real meaning behind the suggestive language is actual very strong advice. So if you hear suggestive language like could, would, might, ought to, that's suggestive language, suggestive modal verbs, and these are being used to give you strong advice. It's not that they're for suggestion. So a classic way that British people do this would be something like, "I think you might want to consider this." So this is a classic way of telling somebody they're wrong or they've done something wrong. The fact that we've used suggestive modal verbs, it's a cover for strong advice. It's not something that you should really take as optionally. You should take it as strong advice, especially if it's from a boss. So of course, absolutely, they do need to do something different. They do need to rethink something, but we're doing it with suggestion to make it indirect and make it gentle and to save someone's face, because that's what we're all about. Also, be careful not to misinterpret understated language, such as "I see what you mean" or "that's interesting." So what that might signal to a non-native is that something is interesting or somebody agrees with you. But these phrases, "I see what you mean" or "oh, that's interesting," generally a British person uses these kinds of phrases when they are not so interested and they're feeling a bit dismissive, or maybe they don't want to keep discussing a particular topic. Perhaps there's something more interesting at hand, or perhaps it's just not of interest to them, but they don't want to tell you directly. So they'll tell you with "I see what you mean" or "oh, that's interesting." So don't take these phrases at face value ever. So that was just a few ways in which the British use passive aggressive tactics to sort of avoid feeling uncomfortable, avoid feeling awkward, to save face, to avoid confrontation, refusals, or mask indecision, or that kind of thing. Now, I am going to do another version of this video, but I'm going to attempt to do it for how the Americans use passive aggressive behavior to convey other messages within their language. So don't forget, get yourself subscribed so you don't miss out on that one. If you enjoyed this video today, I really appreciate all of your likes, your shares. I'm always interested to read your comments. Please keep them polite. Don't be naughty in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one really soon. Cheers. Bye.
Okay, so I definitely may have to check out that American one. That sounds very interesting. Um, wow. Okay, so the reason why I always mention being from New York is because I feel like obviously when you know where someone's from, right, and you know their cultural background too, as far as even going down to like ethnicity, all that is like a blueprint to figure out how somebody perceives things and how they perceive the world, because we're raised different. You know, if I said I was raised in a mansion, or if I said I was raised in a trailer park, there's going to be different perspective there. So I don't mention New York to be like as a badge of like, oh yeah, I don't do it. Like, I just say it to say that's where I'm from, but I'm also from upstate New York too. So even within that, that's two different worlds, right? I was raised in upstate New York, but I was always going back and forth to New York City. And then when I was 16 years old, I lived in New York City for about 7 years or so. So the even that difference there. You get what I'm saying? You could meet somebody that could say they're from New York, right? Upstate New York. Well, there's like I'm from New York. I'm from such and such New York, and around the states, like say someone in Nebraska or someone in Atlanta, wherever, they're always gonna think the city, the city, the city. So you could be from farmland somewhere near Jamestown or near Ithaca or Saratoga Springs, these places upstate New York, and or you could be from Sleepy Hollow, and they could, and in their mind they're always gonna think New York City, New York City. Oh, you're from New York City. There's a big difference there, and there's a big difference on how those those two different people they act. It's different. You get what I'm saying? Someone from New York City gonna be way more impulsive, be more way more quick to just fast, 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 fast. So I mention these things so you guys can get a better indication of how I'm receiving your comments and the things that people say. Now, there's something somebody said in a comment. Shout out to Natasha Fletcher 600. She said, "With you being very polite, forgive my bluntness. Once again, mentioning being from New York, the bluntness is that's what I'm used to. But is this because of your being an African American and therefore more likely to be considered confrontational or similar?" And the responses that come with that, I only ask because we don't really see this level of racism in Europe, but the media suggests it's a bit bloody frequent across the pond. Okay. Okay, so to answer that question, well, I just feel like as a man, period, in the times we live in, I'm gonna touch on this lightly. As a man, period, in the times we live in, uh, you definitely can feel, I guess, threatening to be masculine, and that goes for every race, right? I feel like we live in a time period where just being a masculine man, that can be offensive, right? Enough, just being a certain way. But I'm gonna touch lightly on that as far as being a so-called African American. Yeah, I mean, I never really know who's in the comments like that, and what's in their subconscious and how they were really raised. So, and me not knowing too much about the passive aggressiveness I don't know when someone's really coming at me, and me being from where I'm from and how we are, the way we grew up, especially in the so-called black community in New York, the way you grow up is, hey, you better speak your mind, right? Be direct. You get into a fight, you come home, you look like you crying. Your mom, what? You better get back out there and win that fight. You better keep fighting till you win. Like, we grew up different. We perceive the world different. So, um, like how I come off is not. I don't. I'm learning that different audiences and how they perceive me, but hopefully people aren't looking at me in that type of in that with that type of judgment because of maybe my skin color or things like that. I mean, there's no way to avoid stuff like that. It is what it is. I'm proud to be who I am, love who I am. Very, very kind person, have a very, very big heart, and definitely the type of person, if I seen your child in harm's way, I would sacrifice my life to help them, no matter what background they come from. That's my character. But yeah, I definitely am straightforward a lot, and upfront, and there's all type of ways people can see that as, right, based on how they grew up or what's really in their subconscious, and their personal insecurities maybe, or judgment, all that type of stuff. But it's all good. I'm gonna keep spreading love, and those that got big hearts and those that can see, they're gonna they're gonna feel my heart. But this was definitely an interesting video. Yeah, it's cool to learn. I'm really excited to see what she did with from an American perspective. And yeah, she's very well spoken and definitely conveys her message in a way that's easy to understand. I did see a lot of similarities though, as far as the "I'll let you know" and Well, that's what is it? Well, that's just brilliant. Like that's kind of Americans do that too. You get what I'm saying? They're definitely sarcastic like that too. So we may have a lot of more similarities than we think, for sure. But with that, got me thinking about my sarcastic friends now that are just. I mean, you'll come across some people that are. I mean, look at Wednesday Adams for example, right? She's pretty. She's both. She's direct, but then she could come at you in a way where you don't know she could, because it's a sign of intelligence too. At the same time, right? It's clever. It's witty. You know, if you when you're nice with that tongue like that, and somebody go right over somebody's head. So that's how Wednesday Adam is, and I always said Wednesday Adam is like my spirit twin. I love Wednesday Adam, but okay, so original link in the description. Everybody enjoy your day, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope that helps in understanding me a little bit more. If I were to ever ask a question, like, or say, oh, I feel like this may be a shot, or I feel like it's not like beef. It's just trying to understand. It's not even being, it's just trying to understand. I'm, being more open to the conversation and figuring out you know, at that point, all people got to do, like if someone was to comment something and I felt like I don't understand, I'd be like, okay, I kind of felt this way about it. Then all someone has to do is be like, oh, nah, it's what I, da, 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 just break it down. That's it. And, oh, okay, cool, cool. Like, that's open conversation. I feel like you build like that. I feel like when people kind of like hide how they really feel and just kind of ignore it, I feel like that's how people like at the same time you build up animosity towards others. And yeah, I'm not really about that. I'm an open book a lot when it comes to my feelings, right? Not necessarily my lifestyle, but my feelings. Like I'm be an open book. Like I'm I guess that leaves myself vulnerable at the same time because then people could judge me. But hey, it is what it is. So, original link in the description. I probably said that like 3 times. I will see you all soon. Much love.